running an agency doesn't have to feel like juggling flaming chainsaws. At Schmidt Consulting Group, we help you ditch the chaos, land more clients, and even enjoy running your business again. No fluff, no BS, just strategies that actually work. Check us out at schmidtconsulting.group because your agency deserves better.
Get an inside look at cutting-edge safety innovations with BJ and Justin from Fennec Engineering as they reveal how they brought Amazon-endorsed tech to the world. Don't miss this story of risk, robotics, and relentless problem-solving.
Well, thanks for joining me. I'm boys from Fennec here, Justin and BJ. BJ, I want to hear a little bit about what you're working on these days and tell me a little bit about your journey into how you got into this work.
Yeah. Oh, man. So this is like, 5 years in the making or more?
Yeah.
Now. Obviously, we've done this many times before, but most recently, I've got to, I guess, now talk about this publicly, which is really exciting. I've always kind of referenced work with Amazon and other big companies, but this one finally got to a point where Amazon endorsed us talking publicly about it, and we'll get more into it. But really, it's about that starting from the entrepreneurship, right? I'm an entrepreneur, but there's a lot of advantage of doing things with large organizations because there's something that I always like to refer to, and that is the idea of what is business and what is business in the structure of the world, right? So you have big business, big enterprise, and you have small business, startups and things like this, you have everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
But big enterprise and even big mid-sized business, they do something really well, and that is maintain and they do so and make things available, right? But what they don't do very well is innovate quickly, right? And it's natural, right? The bigger you get, the more process and policy, the more people, the more diverse you get, so the more process you have to put into place, which naturally slows things down, but if required, right? For growth, stability, all those different things we talk about. And then there's the business that is tiny, right? And it's rapid, it moves fast, it breaks things, right? And they innovate really well, but they cannot scale. It is just so hard to get from that 1 to 2, right? 0 to 1 is all that innovation real fast, but then getting from 1 to 2 and beyond is so hard. You just can't scale in the same way. It's a different team, different types of people. And so what I typically like to do in my career and what I've done over the last number of decades almost now is really combine those two. What are the great things about small business? The rapid scale teams, the innovation, the culture, all those different things. And then how do you match it up and address the big things, the big scale needs of a large organization? It's pretty rare. And it's about, identifying those change makers inside. Of course, I'm sitting next to one.
That's right. Well, speaking of, Justin, tell me a bit about your journey.
So, I started on the big business side of things. Obviously, I worked in aerospace defense. And then for the last almost 10 years, I worked over at Amazon. And that's where, in meeting BJ, we took what was a really agile requirement and need for developing a lot of safety tools that they could leverage. And we kind of combined that with BJ and Fennec's capability to deliver. And we merged those two together. And I think we've come up with something that's kind of revolutionary and really poised in terms of timing to meet the needs of what the public is going to be looking for in terms of technology in the future.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, BJ, because I think and again, I'd love for you to help me understand this because I think there's also a really interesting sort of dichotomy between what you just talked about the reason why companies slow down in innovation. And sometimes as we see is it's to avoid risk. And the tools and things that you're building are specifically to help people avoid risk. And so how does that get born out of a larger organization that's trying to reduce risk that you can create a startup that helps reduce risk?
I wouldn't say that it helps avoid risk. I think it helps quantify risk. There is risk, right? Like we all know somebody, right? And as a joke, I usually like to, if I can box people in, sometimes I'll say like, if I know somebody, the worst part, right? I'm actually, pretty risk tolerant. I'm an entrepreneur. It's one of the things that you need. And if you're waking up in the morning and you're in Ohio, like like we are right now, and you're calculating the chances, your statistical chance of being bit by a shark that day, then your risk tolerance is really low, right? So like, And I like to classify people and box people in like that. So there is always a chance you'll get bit by a shark when you're staying in Ohio. It's really low, but you can probably reach a coast with a shark and get bit in one day, right? If you're living in Ohio, right? So it's really about quantifying risk, not avoiding it. And so
Makes sense.
That part of the dynamic of a large organization. Amazon, very uniquely, and I'm not necessarily qualified to talk because I've only been there for 5 years on the outside. Justin obviously has lived it. And you could probably see some of the look in his eyes, right? From that. Yeah, in the end, Amazon for a large organization is a very special place. And it still moves at a very good clip for a very large organization, like any of the big tech companies, right?
Yeah.
But Amazon is very unique in that. And so I don't think that we would have been able to do what we did probably anywhere else. Amazon, a lot of the bad PR it gets in, quantifying risk and ultimately safety, right? Because what is risk? Well, qualification of, safety generally as a broader kind of definition and category. It's actually, for all the bad PR and all the things that Amazon goes through on a daily basis, Amazon really hypersensitive to safety and human safety specifically. It really does try. But it's also really hard to keep people safe when you have 1.5 million people that you're trying to doing all these different types of jobs and pushing the envelope of what it means for deploying robotic, autonomous robots.
Well, it's not just the robots. I mean, you've got trucks, you've got other machinery, you've got so many other types of things to be concerned about, right?
Yeah, and the question there comes now, can you create a system by which you can identify, characterize, and then mitigate risk that kind of applies broadly across that spectrum so that you can enable high quality, but also calibrated results between all of these different and sometimes diverse systems? And that was really kind of the genesis for what we ended up creating.
Does that mean, when you first, and BJ, we talked about this, is that, and Justin, you had mentioned this even before we started recording, that there's this whole world that can open up around us. Is that where the idea came? Was like, oh my gosh, to just open up this whole thing? Or was it a step-by-step process of like, let me solve this problem. Oh, that I could solve this problem. And was it more iterative like that? Or was there a big vision right away?
Also, I think there was an evolution of it. We had an immediate need, and in trying to address that immediate need that was kind of Amazon's robotic solution focused, we created a tool that took it up a couple layers of abstraction to allow it to be applied across diverse technologies. And when we saw that capability, in my mind, that's when it solidified in my mind that, this is something that the open market needs. And as we kind of transition, I think we're in an industrial revolution, right? Where we're looking at robotics, autonomy, and technology in general with, the introduction of machine learning, AI. We're entering a time where the consumer is going to have the ability to purchase like these advanced robotic products in the home. And in order for people to be able to purchase those products and not be exposed to risk, there has to be this consistent application of safety in that same high quality and calibrated manner in the consumer space, just like we were looking at in the industrial space.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it goes beyond just obviously we attack robotics up front because that's really where the real risk happens, right? Because you have these big robots that are inhumanly strong, right?
Yep.
And then it's turning around. It doesn't even mean to hurt somebody, but if it swings arm or it turns right, and it's a humanoid robot, it turns around and hits somebody, like that means real harm, right? So that's the obvious thing. That's what we talk about on a daily basis and what we really did. But now we're moving into this thing that came, 2 or 3 years ago. We talked a lot about it, right? Recognizing AI. I think it's a previous discussion that you and I had, Kurt, was really about like AI agents. And it's a lot of buzzwords and all this kind of stuff. But in the end, you can think of agents, whether it processes a spreadsheet and generates data, or if it does a calculation, or if it's very broadly just simply says hi and does some talk back and forth with you, like Gemini Live or a lot of those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, that agent is a robot. It may not have physical capabilities, might in the future, But today it's not. But in the same type of risk stuff has to be applied to it, because just because you're processing a spreadsheet, just because an AI agent is processing a spreadsheet, the values that it processes to be used downstream in something that a robot uses, right? Or that another human uses. And if for whatever reason that agent hallucinated and provided wrong values that were not checked or mitigated downstream of that application, you can actually expose a significant risk factor, right? That's either robotic or on a human. And so applying a structured, systematic approach to quantifying risk and ultimately validating and verifying that is really what we've been pushing for the last 5 years. And now, magically, right? It's kind of crazy that this for the first time, Amazon was actually out-licensed technology to allow us to take this thing that we've created that takes you all the way from quantifying your risk, putting a concept around it, defining requirements about that risk, right? And about the thing that you're designing, or robots, right? And then ultimately giving you the tools in a systematic way to validate and verify. So actually test it. And then when all that stuff changes, right, in the middle of the project, it always does, it's never as simple as the V I just laid out, the model we call it. It's being able to identify the points of where everything changed, right? But identify it right away so you can change it and mitigate it very quickly and efficiently so we keep up with the speed of innovation, which we talk about all the time. And so it's really carrying all that through. And that's the kind of the platform and the technology that we've been working on. And I think what keeps us driving and what we're so freaking excited about. Leveraging technology like AI and stuff in it, but not allowing it, always making sure the humans verifying first. That's the big piece of everything. So we're an AI first company, but at the end, it's really the humans that matter, right? In all of this, and will be, right?
Well, and that's why I want to ask, because what we see these days is Sam Altman and all these people on testifying before Congress about safety with AI, but we don't see that with the robots. Is that just an accessibility thing? Is that why we're not regulating robots from the government level and we're talking about it from an AI level from the government? Is it just because I don't have a Elon robot in my house right now? Is that what's going on?
I think it's coming very soon, honestly. And I think that, AI is a big discussion point, and BJ covered that really well. But when you combine AI and robotics together, that's a new horizon. And I think in many cases, it's a little bit of the Wild West out there. People are defining or actively defining what the regulatory environment is going to look like. We're defining kind of what the hazards that can be presented by these products are, and we're defining how they can be mitigated. And that's why, I'm kind of passionate about, if you're going to be creating these new elements of technology, you have to be creating mechanisms that allow us to ensure that that technology is safe for use around humans. And that's really what Fennec's core mission is about. It's about, whether it be functional safety or even, if you consider cybersecurity and any of these other things, products are safe and trusted by the consumer. And you have to enable to do that. You have to create that foundational quality in your system that can provide that trustability to the consumer. And ASAP really kind of focuses on that.
Yeah. And really where that trust comes from is not necessarily from the robotic builder. I think traditionally we've done that, but it really comes from a third party. And it's that third party stamp of approval. And there's many different, what we call NRTLs, nationally recognized testing labs, will do that. If you pick up any wall words, right, I'm sure that even if I open this up, there might be a UL sticker on it or something, right? I pulled up my random electronic. And really, it's a third party. What the stamp basically says is that someone who has no dog in the fight of this product getting sold, Sony, I guess, is this, that they have verified that the standards were followed. Not necessarily it's guaranteed safe, but that some standard and structured approach was taken to say that, hey, this thing was safe. Now, this is a remote control for a TV. Chances of it hurting someone, very low. Problem, when this gets really complicated, you build AI into this, and then all this a little robotic arm pops up and is strong enough to poke someone in the eye. Like that starts to get crazy. And that's the type of problem that we are really trying to mitigate, right? And get people there faster. Because that third party regulation always lags innovation. And that's okay. We need to. If we let regulation dominate everything, we never have anything. for good reason, right? And it's very risk adverse when we're regulation. With that said, there's a healthy balance. What we're really trying to do is close that gap. We've gotten so fast. We're only getting faster, right? With AI in terms of new technology, new innovation, the things that make our lives more convenient, which I argue is the reason for technology, right? So really, in the end, what we're really trying to do with our advanced safety acceleration platform, ASAP, we call it, is really trying to drive and close that gap for faster. Make things safer because you're taking a systematic approach, but do it so fast now in a very systematic way that you're not holding up innovation anymore. That regulators can keep up at an even quicker pace and not be lagging behind, which is just going to result in more people getting hurt. And quite frankly, first time someone gets hurt, well, you stop it all, right? That's the reason we don't have fully autonomous cars. It's a problem. It's a safety problem, right?
All right.
See fully autonomous cars driving around, right? Waymo, Tesla, everything. It's like, why don't we see those? Why can't I drive one? Why can't I get in one? Maybe July that change. We'll see, right? With autonomous robotaxi, I doubt it. And the problem is not technology; it's safety. We cannot accept a certain level of risk, right? The risk is too high still because because it's so complicated to go down that V model, the systematic approach of highly complex vehicle, highly complex machine in order to really achieve the level that you need of guarantees, or a better word is it's just confidence.
Exception that's out there on the market right now, right? Which is, hey, there is no way to be able to achieve safety in a complex system like that. The safety standards are so out of date. How can we do that? And that's where I think the framework that we put into place to say, it doesn't matter what kind of technology you have that you're trying to do, whether it's a humanoid robot or an autonomous driving vehicle, systematically identify your hazards, you mitigate those risks, you create safety functions that can be complex safety functions to mitigate those risks, and you design them from an architectural and detail design level so that they can be verified and validated at the end. This unlocks the ability for you to safety certify and create trustable safety around any technology. And I think that's the thing I personally am the most passionate about is I really want to change the perception from safety being something that you add on at the end. You create some new technology and then you kind of bolt safety onto it. I want to change the perception to be, once you create this new technology, you should be building safety from the beginning. You should be designing in the safety system of your new product as you design the new product itself. And that enables you then to create a system that not only is performing, but also safe at the same time. You need to have the safety system for create performance that is commensurate with your control system to unlock that potential.
It's that part that's the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, but how do you do that? And that's one of the things that I can't say that we've somehow solved magically, but we're a lot further and closer. And the answer really is getting everyone involved from the get-go. Right.
Yeah.
And I say everyone, I'm talking about, not just the safety guys, of which there's not that many of, something next to like 100, right? Honestly, at the level he's at. But really about getting the electrical engineers, the mechanical engineers, the product owners, the business analysts, and even the janitor, right? Who may have, deal with that device or something. Bring them all together and give them an enjoyable experience. Now we're talking about UX, right? UX and UI. Give them an enjoyable experience to actually interact so that they can potentially make sure that their voice is heard, right? And that, we can leverage things like generative AI to make sure that things are not missed and all that. The efficiency is boosted so you can scale all of that. That's why we can do now at the enterprise level. It's not just startups that can participate in, rapid process anymore. Now we can actually scale it so that now everyone takes a part of that. And that enjoyable, the delightfulness, right? I'm an engineer, so I hate that. Like in the end, right? The delightfulness factor is something that's going to motivate someone to actually integrate it up front.
Oh, for sure.
Process and not a bolt-on at the end.
Exactly. Yeah. If you just put sum it all up, right? Man, if you put the same effort into your safety system as you put into the rest of your product, imagine what you could do with a safety system.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's what I think is interesting about what you folks are doing is that because in my history in engineering, right, you submit, you when you're done, you submit it and then you wait for quality assurance, human factors, whoever, to do their job, and then they send it back with notes and things, and you basically pay engineering tennis for a long time, but what you folks are talking about is something much more integrated, right?
Yeah, it's systems. Everything is about systems. I think I've probably talked about this every time we've talked together, Kurt, and that is, this is how we hire. This is how we view the world. And there's really not that many people in the end. And that is a systems approach to the world. How do you identify it? And I've been struggling with, how do you actually classify that? How do you explain it? And how do you find that in someone? And it's kind of a deep buried nuance. It's not something that it's obvious. Like there's not a set of interview questions that's going to expose, this. And I'm sure that, Amazon actually has a really great star interview method that kind of teases that out, that approach. But in the end, it's really not. It seems like something that you're born with, and it's really just an approach to the world, and kind of how do you, it's part observation, it's part categorization, it's part synthesis of concepts and ideas, it's part just obviously there's a risk tolerance or lack thereof, right? Of approach to things, taking the risk to categorize something when you don't actually know how to box it in, those type, all the way conceptually, all the way down to actually just designing. And it's pretty amazing. Obviously there's the speed to getting to that systems oriented thinking too. That whole thing really comes down, it really, everything boils down to the ability to think in systems and many different ways to classify that. And
right.
I think we've kind of found that, and the people that we've hired and tend to work with and just get along with tend to approach the world like that too. So that's kind of one of the things that we really try to approach in our system, or in our system building, and then applying those system type concepts to to our customers and everyone that we're really trying to focus on helping.
Yeah, because I find that in a lot of organizations, when it comes to safety, quality assurance, there is obviously a systems idea to it, but there is a cultural challenge in a lot of places where it's not really top priority as much, or it's an afterthought, or it's it's a box that's got to get checked. And Justin, with your experience at Amazon, I mean, how have you taken that experience into this tool? Because I do see that, part of the challenge is obviously getting people to see the opportunity there, but also some of the changes that will have to happen in order to fully adopt a tool and bring it in and bring all the people together as you're building, right?
Yeah, I think that, Amazon realized, and I fully agree with the fact that if you get into greater levels of complexity that you expect out of your safety system, hey, let's add on safety at the end approach, it won't work. It's going to be the limiting factor in what your machine or what your advanced technology is going to be able to do. If you invest all this time for your control system or your robot or whatever it is, to put machine learning and all of this advanced technology into it, and then you try to add on a very simplistic safety system at the end, your ultimate performance is going to be limited by what your safety system can do. Amazon really, I think when I worked there, they were very good about saying, okay, if we're going to create a new product from the beginning, we really need to consider the performance that we need to get out of both the regular control system and our safety system to enable the product to be successful. And that kind of translated into a safety culture that was very proactive, that ultimately translated into what we see represented in our tool set. That's not to say that, you can't do it and our tool set requires it, but I do think that when you get into these advanced safety functions, and, this is my plea to the greater safety culture. I really want to change the greater safety culture in America and in the world, to kind of take this proactive approach, because I think that when you do this investment up front, it's going to pay dividends later in terms of what your robots can do and how they can be trusted, or whatever the technology may be.
Yeah. It's if I were to draw an analogy, I'm also, for those who heard my stuff before, I do a lot of stuff in healthcare too. And, it's all about prevention, right? If you actually go and you're making sure that you're doing all the things that you do, you go to the doctor, you go verify stuff, you're keeping track of your trend data on your Oura Ring and your continuous glucose monitor and all those different, like that type of stuff, that prevention, it's tough to do. But there's things in technology that are coming out today, like your Oura Ring, like your Fitbit before, like your CGM, like all those different things that are making it easier and easier, or even more enjoyable. becoming gamified and things like that. That's kind of one of the things that we're trying to do with safety. So put it to the forefront, but also now make it more enjoyable so that, Justin's plea can be heard and people actually want to do it. It's really hard otherwise. Like, I don't blame anyone. No one wants to do that crap.
That's a good point.
It's frustrating, right? But it's really about making it more enjoyable, really focusing on it. And then tools like AI and all those different things are making that now a reality. Like we actually now can grasp some of that because we can scale these type of things that just before were just too hard to scale. So it's really exciting to be part of that. And to have Amazon invest in something like this for the last 5 years, right? No one else would have really done this. It's pretty cool. We just happen to be the right place at the right time. Or I won't rift off him. He's the one who did the work. And so like all that kind of stuff is really positioning us to really drive that, whether it's an AI agent you're trying to make safe, a real robot, humanoid robot you're trying to make safe, or just a freaking, stamp press that some guy stands at and just pulls the bar 20 times a day or 1,000 times a day, like whatever it is. It's really about, making that experience, not the experience of necessarily pulling the lever, but the experience of building in the consideration of safety. That's really what I'm excited about and why I'm spending a lot of time really focusing on, because it really is cross-cutting. It's very cool.
He acts like they're excited about safety, but that's turned him into a convert.
Finally, I can recite things like 13849, 20508, 12100. It hurts me inside. But
I love it. I love it. Well, Justin, I want to ask you, because obviously these certifications, these types of things, they are very complex. And I know, BJ, you referred to it, this tool is kind of as the TurboTax for safety, which I think is amazing because obviously just like any rules and regulations in the tax code, it's got to be updated regularly. And so I can imagine with safety, we're constantly finding new opportunities for improving safety over time. So maybe, Justin, could you walk me through a little bit about how this tool solves that specific problem, and maybe walk me through a use case that would be really good for the layman that might be listening?
Yeah. So, I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but there are different kinds of standards. There's type A, type B, type C standards that are out there in the world. And when we were creating the tools, we said, how are we going to create this consistent tool set that could be applied to a robotic arm or a mobile robot or maybe a drone or maybe some sort of home use technology, right? And the way that we approached it is we, instead of relying on the prescriptive type C standards, we looked at type B and type A standards to guide what the overall process would look like and provide enough elasticity and latitude in the tools so that you could tune what you're doing in the tools to any kind of technology. So, for the safety nerds out there, that means that, we're looking more at a 61508 kind of V model using maybe some inferences from 62061 or 13849. But, we're really trying to say, how can we apply safety in a very, very broad way? That also provides a benefit of saying that, if your process is so broad and non-specific, it actually kind of prevents the need for massive amounts of change on a year-over-year basis, because maybe your very, very specific standard is changing and it says that your architecture has to be X, Y, or Z. But if your tool can cover any architecture, then you don't necessarily need to have an update in the tool. And so we've kind of future-proofed it in that way. The converse side of that is we're not very prescriptive. If you're very broad, there tends to be just like, well, what do I do next? So we really used UI to help guide the user, whether they be an experienced engineer or someone who's brand new to safety, to know how to design a system. There are these prompts, and there's this good UI that allows anyone, whether they're an electrical engineer or a safety engineer, to contribute to what the definition of the ultimate safety system is, and to guide, using this common set back-end attributes, guide the results of one piece of safety analysis to inform the next piece of safety analysis. So if you were to kind of come up with something really, really simple, let's say that you've got a robotic toy that drives around on the table, right? And is made for your home. How would the tools work? Well, first you'd say, what are the risks of this little robot? Let's say the robot's so light and so small that if it ran into you, you don't care. What if it dropped the table and lands on you? Now the weight of the robot, maybe through the acceleration of gravity, right? Maybe that's a bigger impact than just driving around the table. So
sure,
you'd have a tool that helps you kind of explore what are those hazards, and then you discover in the tasks and hazards that get defined in the system. Falling off a table is now a hazard that we need to mitigate. And so we decided we're going to put in a function that's going to be, a negative obstacle or cliff detection system. And our cliff detection system would guide on how we define the cliff detection system. It would be able to guide the user to say, what are the characteristics of the cliff detection system? So it has to look ahead of the robot when it's going forward. Maybe it has to look behind the robot if the robot goes backwards. And maybe you have to consider rotation if you're at the end of the table and you want to turn around and go back. You've got to have a standoff distance from the end of the table, and your system has to react quick enough to bring the robot to a stop. If it's going full speed towards the end of the table, you got to make sure it stops before it flies off the end and things like that. That would be kind of a safety concept that you put together. From that, we would guide the user to create a set of requirements that could be system level decomposed into your subsystems. And then from that, you can inform the design. We'd kind of walk the user through, okay, great. You're going to have some sort of sending. You're going to have like a logical controller that says, if your sensor sees that the cliff is there, we're going to change our state from running full speed ahead mode to stop it fast as we can mode. And then there's going to be actuation associated with that. So maybe there's brakes instead there in your little robot. And then creating a design, and we have to verify it. So we'd run through a set of tests, like robot runs towards the end of a table with your lights on. What happens if you're in a house and you turn the lights out? Does the robot still work? What happens if your kid puts toothpaste on the front of the robot? Do your sensors still work? All this kind of stuff, And then ultimately come up with a comprehensive set of test cases, and that comes into creating one cohesive test report.
And we're actually, so that's where we diverge from TurboTax, right? TurboTax help you fill out your K, input your K1s and all that kind of stuff. Make sure your Schedule C's filled out, 10.4, all those different things, right? Well, that's kind of the first front, right? And then the second side of this is test and validation. We've been, it's pretty cool. We're one of the few, not only, who have actually built autonomous robots to test autonomous robots, really freaking cool, right? And part of this platform is be able to control all those things. So that's where I diverge from TurboTax, where TurboTax doesn't necessarily verify on the back end your taxes, right? It'll submit, but then an auditor has to come through. Well, what we can do with now our advanced safety acceleration platform, ASAP, is we can actually run an entire test automation platform that will actually run your robot, run your AI, run your safety, whatever it is, tests all the way through. And every time something changes, and if you're broad enough, you don't actually have to resubmit, but instead you are actually actively keeping up, right, with all of these different things as we go. So it's really a whole life cycle. It's not one of those things that, I only have to do this for the first 6 months and then I'm done and then everything's great and then I forget about it. No, like this is constant. You are constantly engaging now because AI is constantly evolving. It's the beauty of AI. It's very dynamic, but then the challenge of that is the dynamic part of it makes it so that you have to actually track it all the time through the entire life cycle of it. So it's way more now, right? It's like, hey, while my taxes, I'm done. I'll just move on to next year. Not anymore, right? It used to be that way. Not anymore. Now, next year, you got to keep looking back previous years, right? Got to make sure that that mitigation, that model update, or just, hey, I've got new lighting in the facility, right? Over there in the corner. It's going to affect this perception system, right? Or I got a new lamp in the corner, that little kid toy. I got to make sure that new lamp light refraction isn't going to make it run off the table because I'm not meet my 500 millisecond response time to, slow down at a certain speed, right? Like all those different things really go. And so that's really what our platform really tries to do. And then if you overlay all the AI agents on top of that, we'll get into that another time.
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah, I've got so many more questions for you guys, but I do need to get to this transition from big company to next generation company. And how do those conversations go? How does that start? Because I'm guessing, Justin, when you were sort of building through all of this, the plan wasn't necessarily like, oh, we're just sitting on the bubble to break out, or maybe it was. But tell me about how that conversation goes as you're kind of going down this journey. Was it always part of the plan to make this and break it off into its own form? And if it was, whose idea was that? How did you negotiate those things? And I don't need to get into finer details here, but just how did those conversations go? And again, I think people listening would love to hear if they are working in a large organization and maybe they are on an innovation team or an internal startup. How did that process go for you guys? And what were some things that you really enjoyed about it? What were some things that maybe could have been improved? And just love to hear about that.
Well, I got to say,
I'll let you go first.
So, working at Amazon, I think the way that this developed was that we created something, and the more that it became defined and the more that we created, the more we saw that, the open market really needed something like this. And it took a really special partner in Amazon for them to be willing to share it. This is something that they'd invested in, and that didn't need to take place. And
to be honest, we say Amazon. It's really like big organizations are made up of humans, right? They're organic, right? It's really special people all the way up the chain, and I think we can name here like Renholm, like that dude, like freaking awesome. Now I just say that because on our board, good to say that. So, but then other guys like Paris Wellman, awesome, right? Like Paris, VP of Amazon Robotics, great partner, right? I was, still afraid to tell him, but like, the guy's freaking awesome, right? Right? I'll just give him trouble like that. And then of course, Joe Q, like Joe Quinlan, who's just, he's at the top, but like, it's just freakishly cool. And that when you can align all those people, which Justin has really an amazing ability to inside this massive organization, to align everybody, you kind of know that you're onto something. When everyone's like, yeah, I get it. Yes. Like I'm willing to, every time they're all looking at you, so he's looking at me and they're saying, prove it. Right. Well, we have to prove it every time. And it's always, I don't really trust you. I don't really think you can get this done. Prove it. Right. And if we just keep proving it every step, right. And that's a systematic approach, you can actually do that. Right. So yeah, I didn't mean to jump, but
I really pointed out a great point, which is Amazon's got a very technical management chain, right? You go up from, principal engineers to directors to vice presidents, and they all have a deep understanding of what it takes from a technical side to build advanced technology in robotics. Because of that, there was this unique ability for the AR management chain to recognize a need for innovation in the safety space that was commensurate with the innovation they were seeing in, the rest of the robotic space. And because of that, it made the organization both more open to innovation for their use, but also meant that, they could see the value that this tool set would bring to the open market. And I think that really influenced the ability of the organization to team. And, in my personal career, I wasn't looking at leaving Amazon. I had a great management chain, but as all of these transactions took place and, Fennec was, out licensed, and it became clear to me that a win for Fennec was still a win for Amazon. That was a big motivator for me, is that I think that what this tool set has the ability to do, like I keep saying, is really kind of change the perception of what safety is. I think that that's my personal passion point. And getting as many people exposed to proactive safety, to high quality functional safety, to truly following the V model development process, I think is the major motivator for me in the transition.
Yeah. Was there like a defining the conversation where it was like, this is what we're doing? Or was it just a natural, I'm just thinking of, the, like in the movies, right? Where somebody comes in and just like, all right, stamp, and this is what we're doing. We're moving forward. Was it like that, or was,
well, there was actually two. The first one was many years ago. And we were sitting in Paris Wellman's office. First time I ever met Paris. He's the vice president of Amazon Robotics. And, we had this idea, and we'd already deployed a few of the tools, and we're helping, right? We had some success. It's about a year in, and I got enough, that a VP would even like say, oh, what's going on here, right? Is this, what's going on? I remember sitting in his office, and of course he came in very good naturedly and gave me a lot of crap about what I was wearing. I don't remember what I was wearing, but I just remember that. And, one of the things that I said, like, look, Paris, can I just have this technology? I think it's great, and go. And Paris was like, F no, you're not. Like, this is Amazon stuff. I'm like, there's no way. And I was like, okay, I respect that. Can we work something out? And he's like, prove it. Right. Now it took another 4 years or something, but we proved. So that was really defining, was that he was not saying no. And he even worked, right, alongside within the confines of what Amazon policy and everything, which was good. And everyone has done everything like by the book, which is the other thing that's really worked through this.
Sure.
We didn't any rules the entire time, which is amazing. I love breaking rules, but we didn't have to. Like, right? It was tough. I'm not saying it was easy, but like that's the one, I think, testament to Justin and everyone above, is like every rule was followed, and it just so happened it kind of worked out. And then the next defining moment, I think, was This was with, obviously Kevin and the group. And that was like, look, we can do this one of two ways. Amazon can take this and what we call Apple Hire, right? Because we have, at that point, just a few months ago, we have this amazing tool set. We can Apple Hire, meaning take the team in, take the Fennec team in, everyone's a blue badge, meaning Amazon employees, and really changes the world. And, I think we talked about it internally and not just us. I mean, obviously lawyers and everyone at Amazon and said, well, it's possible that these schmucks at Fennec might be able to do this because they do it, so well, of course, to our own horn, right? They've been doing it so well and at the speed that we need to do it. Why don't we give them a chance? And I think, that was another defining moment where corporate development's staring at us and saying, prove it, right? Kind of thing. We put some money in, you put some, some effort in, prove it. And I think at that point, that was that defining moment. I distinctly remember which one of these, kind of things, times. And I think it was really that every policy and process was followed, and it was getting right alignment, looking at which problems were needed to be solved, and fighting the battles that needed to be fought. We were just like, I don't know, like the whole, bless the broken road, which is that song, right? Like it's, we're a broken road, but for whatever reason, we just got lucky at every single step of the way, and you make your own luck, right? But in the end, I think they're very pivotal defining moments all the way through, but I would say there's probably about 6 or 7 of them. For me, those were the two from a business side of making a deal that really defined it. And it was with right people, but it's not like they just happen, right? There was a lot of work up to that. Like you and Kevin working like crazy to get everyone aligned. And then ultimately from there, getting everyone aligned and then ultimately bringing up the conversation with corporate development, like, hey, we got an option here. Which way do you want to go? We're going to get more expensive. So which way would you prefer to go? And obviously the result we're really happy with because it's doing what I love, which is, building value, building business. And it's great to be able to do it with such a supportive partner. And with great people, right? I can do two things well. And so I'm going to turn this into a non-family show, Kurt. So I'll do two things well. I bullshit really well. And I build great teams. Those are the only two skills that I have in life. Yeah. For some reason, there's the magic that, Justin and I have really been able to work with the team. So, I just grift. That's what I do professionally. Yeah. Really the team that's, somehow amazingly pulled this through is a small team. It's like 15, 18 people that have just truly, from building a massive autonomous test cube to, helping all to, obviously this massive enterprise, globally scaled SaaS platform.
I think it's amazing. And again, I think it just goes to show though that a good idea wins every time, right? So there was probably so many things that, like you mentioned, BJ, like that could have gone sideways. You could have had one person in leadership that was like, no, or you could have run up against legal challenges with legal. That was,
to be clear, Kurt, they did. We just kept powering through.
Oh no, I know, but I'm still saying, like, you still overcame it. It wasn't crushed under the weight of that stuff. Like, yes, I'm sure there was a lot of uncomfortable moments, but you still pushed it through. So I'm really proud of you guys and the work that you've done to create this, because it is no small feat. Exactly, like I said, it's no small feat crawling out from under that, because it's a lot of pressure. And for you, Justin, like you said, you had this and still have, but this amazing career you're building, and to make that jump, like, you wouldn't have done that for, an idea that could work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that what's great about what we're doing is that it's been proven, because we had the incubation period at Amazon. We were able to kind of see the fruit of our labor already. And that gives me the confidence to know that when we deploy this out on the open market, which we have, it's really something we can stand behind.
Mm-hmm. And just, you've got a great saying. I think we even talked about it on the last podcast with Kurt about our entrepreneurship. What's the great saying about fired?
Get promoted or get fired. That's our saying every day.
Every morning, we getting promoted today or get fired.
Yep.
We got a lot more promoting than fired. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to have that saying too. It was you're either moving up or you're moving out, right? And at my agency, so it's same attitude. And again, for me, like I mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to be a sideline guy on this journey. And I just want to say from my perspective, like I'm super proud of you guys and what you've been able to accomplish. I've seen the tool. It's fantastic. And I can just see how it's going to keep getting better and better, because I think, the people listening to the show, when you think some the people think of robots, they think of those giant arms that are building cars, but you've got robots all over your house. You've got Roombas, you've got Lego Mindstorms, you've got all these different robots that are showing up on a regular basis and more every single year in your home, in your community, in the schools, in these other places. And to have tools like this that can help ensure a better safety process, I just think it's a game changer, which obviously you guys have seen. And I'm just excited to still be on the journey with you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kurt. It was a lot of fun. We're having a blast. So honeymoon though on it. So
BJ, give me the pitch. If I'm listening to the show and I want to go and learn more, where do I go? Where do I find out more info?
Yeah, on this one, it's fennec-engineering.com. It's after the Fennec Fox. We actually never intended for this thing to go public in the sense of so we just picked a furry animal and went. In fact, all the tools are named after furry animals. We're trying to get away from that, but it seems to stick and it won't go away. So we got a lot of furry animals. So Fennec, as in Fennec Fox -engineering.com, and then you can hit us up by our first and last names at Fennec Engineering, or fill out the form on the website, or you can always just ask around at Amazon, and I'm sure someone will get you to us. The right way.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, thanks.
It was always enjoyable.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love it if you left a review on iTunes or Spotify. It makes a big difference. And be sure to check out schmidtconsulting.group for more ideas and insights. Remember, every big dream starts with a single step. Keep moving forward, stay curious, and don't forget, we're rooting for you. See you next time.